of the Fashionomics Africa Incubator and Accelerator Program. So it seems like there's back. Can you hear me clearly? Is there any back noise? Can you say it in the chat box?
There's an echo.
Okay. Okay, so how about now? Is the sound all right?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you very much, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the second community training session of the Fashionomics Africa Incubator and Accelerator programs. I am super excited to be here and happy to see everyone here. My name is Tobilola Ajibola, and I'm the community manager at the Creative Economy Practice at CC Hub. Now we're streaming this session live on YouTube. So if your internet is unstable, you might want to click on the YouTube link and have it handy. The link is in the chat box. So while we wait, let's have a brief tour of this webinar platform. Use the chat box to introduce yourself by telling us your name and where you're dialing from. If you want to ask a question, kindly use the question and answer button. Do not use the chat box to ask your questions, as the chat box runs very fast and we won't see your questions. Kindly note that translations are available in Arabic, English, French, and Portuguese. So please look for the round interpretation button, click on it, and choose your preferred language. Thank you. So I see some comments. I can see some of your comments in the chat box, and I'm going to be reading them out now. Okay, so Ukeria is saying she's live from Nigeria. Okay, so welcome, Ukeria. Binta Badmos, hello everyone, I'm Binta from Nigeria. This is Helvin from Namibia. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you. So I can see your comments in the chat box. So just keep it coming. Introduce yourself, tell us your name, where you're dialing from, and what you want to learn in today's session. Thank you very much. Okay, so as you know, the Fashionomics Africa Incubator and Accelerator Program is an 8 weeks intensive training program designed by the African Development Bank to increase Africa's participation in the global textile and fashion industry value chain. The community training sessions are capacity building sessions created to equip you as a fashion entrepreneur with deep insights and knowledge of trends and opportunities in the African fashion industry. Now, we are at the second community training session, and it's titled Entrepreneurship Opportunities in the Fashion Ecosystem in Africa. So here are some ground rules. Please switch on the camera. Okay, so we're in the webinar platform, and so your cameras will not be able to come on. So it's just fine like that. Just use your the chat box to send in the comments, anything you want to say, and use a question and answer box to send in your questions. Your microphone is also muted, so please also send your comments to the chat box. Participate actively. Raise your hand if you want to say something. Give space to others to participate. The last ground rule is what we discuss here stays confidential. Okay. So I'm going to move to the poll collection. So we're going to start a poll right now. We're going to take a poll right now. Once the poll comes up, please fill it out immediately. It is super easy to fill out and submit, and we would like everyone to fill out the poll. Thank you as you comply. So we're going to start the poll right now. So I can see that there are 186 people on the call right now, and they're just for questions. So fill out the poll and submit. Fantastic. So one person has filled the poll. I can see the numbers is rising. We have 2% of the people on the call who have filled the polls. This is fantastic, it's rising. It's already at 20. Thank you so much. So if you're done filling the poll, put done in the chat box so that we can know that you're done filling your poll. Fantastic, fantastic. We're already at 35%. It's 38% right now. Okay, so I'm just going to take 1 minute to fill this poll. Our target is 100% participation. So we're already at 52%. Fantastic. So if you haven't filled out the poll, please just click on it and answer the 4 questions. They're all translated in all the 4 languages. Please fill it out and submit. And then when you're done filling out the poll, just type done in the chat box. Thank you. Fantastic. So we're at 66%. So if you know you haven't filled out the poll, please fill. More, 27 seconds more. 20 seconds more. 15 seconds more. So Melody is asking, where is the poll? So it should come up on your phone. Fantastic. So if you're done filling out the poll, just write done in the chat box. Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Haram. Thank you, Afolabi. Habiba, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm just going to leave the poll on, and I want everyone to fill out the poll. So I'm just going to continue the session. So if you haven't filled out the poll, please fill it out. Okay, so don't forget to type done in the comment box or the chat box if you're done filling out the poll. Now to our feature presentation. Today's session is titled Entrepreneurship Opportunities in the Fashion Ecosystem in Africa. And our facilitator is no other than Anne McCreath. So Anne McCreath is a fashion consultant, a trainer, and connector. She is the founder of Kiko Romeo, a Kenyan-based unisex label. She spent the last 25 years building into one of the most innovative fashion brands on the African continent. She is an award-winning fashion designer with over 2 decades of experience in sustainable fashion and development in Africa, as well as earlier years in Europe. She is an expert who is widely recognized as a pioneer in the East African fashion industry. She's passionate about using fashion to create good jobs and build understanding between communities and across social classes. She enjoys sharing her knowledge of design, business, and brand building with the next generation of leaders in Africa. In addition to fashion, she's a trained pranic healer and believes handcrafting can play an important role in well-being. It's a pleasure to have you here, Anne. We look forward to a great learning session. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking in the chat box. I can see you're attending from all over Africa, and some of the countries I know well. Sudan, I've seen, of course, Kenya, where I'm tuning in from today. Ethiopia, Namibia, I've seen South Africa, Nigeria, all of you. Really fantastic to be here and to try and share a bit of my knowledge. There's the question today about entrepreneurship and the fashion ecosystem. I feel that we're surrounded by entrepreneurs all over the place in our relative countries, because so many people on the continent make a living from business. You can have a big fancy business, you can have a small discrete business, but there's businesses of all shapes and sizes. And the businesses in our fashion industry are often very like active, small, little buzzing centers in the informal sector. The informal sector employs a lot of people. And I guess one of the challenges that, you know, the bigger banks on the continent and politicians and development agencies look at is how do we grow our industry from these little micro businesses into something that's more structured, more organized. And that's a challenge that we're looking at right across the continent, and something that's very exciting to talk about with you today, because you represent such a diverse group of countries. And yet when we look at our fashion businesses, there's still so much to do. I say there's so much to do because I actually grew up out of the continent. I grew up in Scotland. I trained in fashion in Italy, worked for a little bit in Milan, and then in Spain, in Barcelona. And there was an ecosystem which was very structured, and it had a lot of different people in the industry specialized in very specific jobs. So as a designer, I could get a job designing for other fashion houses. I could also get a job as a pattern cutter. I could get a job in sales. I could get a job in very many different things. And like me, many others had trained in very specific areas of the fashion industry. So I think, again, as I said, the challenge now is how do we grow our whole fashion ecosystem? How do we bring money into the fashion industry and into our respective economies through the fashion industry? How do we create jobs? How do we flourish? We don't want to just be scraping by. We actually want to make good money, have well-paid salaries. We want to employ people. And we also want to represent the continent in a different way. Between our countries, we want to show our great creativity, the beautiful things we can make, and we want to attract like clients from each other's countries. We don't want to just be dependent on clothing and accessories and so on coming in from other continents even onto our continent before we've developed our ecosystem. So I'm going to share my slides, but we'll also have breaks when we can do a little bit of question and answers. And then another section I want to do with you today is to try and help you ask yourself some questions that help you define where you may fit in the whole ecosystem. You may have studied fashion. You may be working in retail, selling fashion. You may be an accountant who just loves dressing in fashion and is interested in the fashion industry. So all of us fit in this bigger picture. The important thing, I think, with all of these years of experience behind me, is that it's important to do something that you really like. Because if you don't love your work and you spend so many hours doing it, what is the point? It means you're wasting your life doing something you don't like. So let's go through the presentation today, but also try and help you think, what is it that you would actually get more value out of? Maybe you studied fashion design at college, but actually you love just pattern making. And guess what? As a designer, I'd love to hire you as a pattern maker. These are the kind of conversations we need to be having so that we can build services and support each other's businesses. We can do things together. We don't all have to reinvent things each and every time. So let me start by sharing. I hope that if you have questions, you're going to put them in the box. And then at the right time, we'll now get together and we'll answer those questions. So let's go. I'm just going to share my screen. You'll see me again, but we'll move on. So just a little bit about the state of entrepreneurship in the African fashion industry. To me, there's all kinds of things going on because we have these small businesses that are thriving, just tailoring, maybe one person on a machine, making an outfit for a series of clients. And then we also have much bigger fashion businesses in manufacturing, maybe selling locally, maybe exporting, but also we have the start of our own brands, moving into retail and actually having different shops in our urban centers where you can choose to buy something ready-made from the continent. Of course, you also have lots of shops selling fashion from other places as well. And selling fashion is an art, just like creating fashion is an art. So my observations in regards to the kind of design businesses many of us have, they're usually in the informal sector. What that means is we may or may not have a fully registered business. It may be a limited company, but it might be sole proprietorship. And then there's the whole thing of how many employees do we have? Do we contract them formally and tell the government how many people we have working for us? Do we pay taxes for them? Do we pay taxes on our business and so on? So there's different degrees of formalization according to the size of your business. But in general, a large number of people are employed in very informal settings. One of the good things about that, if you're a small business, is you have a pretty flexible way of working. You choose when you work, you choose what the prices are you're going to charge on your things, you choose how you're going to sell them, you choose all kinds of things. But another observation I have is that many of the small businesses, people are working very long hours, working very hard and not always making a lot of money. And to make more money, they work more hours. So hopefully within this Fashionomics course, you've also learned different business models because you can go for high volume, selling a lot at a low price, or you can go for a higher quality product, which you're able to charge more money for. And therefore, you maybe have space to breathe. You don't have to churn. It's a mix. Maybe you're somebody that likes to work like that. It's about finding what you like and about finding how you fit within the wider ecosystem with your brothers and sisters on this call and who are already in the fashion business across the continent. When you have an informal business, you may find it's difficult for you to access capital from the banks. What I mean by that is there are grants and funds nowadays that you can apply to, but there's also the bank, and banks do give loans to businesses, but they always require a certain degree of formality. They require bank statements, they require some kind of financial accounting, and those are things that I consider to be part of the formalizing of your business structure. So there is definitely a high incentive to look at the structure you have now and then work out how, if you're happy in that job, then how are you going to formalize it so you can grow your business and access cash to be able to, say, buy your fabrics, materials, and so on, to make clothes that you know you're going to be paid for later. And just another observation that usually these kind of businesses rely very heavily on the founder of the business in terms of the business skills, the networks they have, and the resources they either have or they're able to mobilize. If you think of small businesses, and many of you are designers on this call, others of you are illustrators, textile people, retailers, like if you as the visionary of the business wasn't there, Do you have a structure in place? Do you have resources in place? Do you have trained personnel in place that the business continues without you? Or, you know, if you take a long 6-month break somewhere, what happens? Does it all just crumble? So we have to be resilient as entrepreneurs. We have to have vision. And I would also encourage you to think through what is this business and this business structure that you're creating, and how can it manage when you're not there? Even if you go for a week or 2 weeks, does everything stop or is something continuing? So these are all parts of the formalization of your business. I wanted to take you through the fashion industry types of jobs and businesses on the continent. We are currently quite limited in ways that we understand what a fashion business is and the job we can do within it. So I sometimes get an accountant at an event saying, oh no, I'm just an accountant. You know, I like fashion, but I'm just an accountant. Whereas for me, actually, an accountant who likes fashion is just fantastic, because you need accountants to do all kinds of things in your business. You need accountants to do your daily, weekly, monthly expenses, what's come in, what's come out. But also you use financial services and people with number skills like accountants to work out how much it costs to make your product. And also, once you've made your product, how much would then be the minimum you can sell your profit for, your product for, to make a profit. So somebody who's good at numbers and in a job like accountancy can add huge value to your fashion business. Another example would be someone in tech. So we've gone to fashion school, we've learned how to make dresses, but now we have to do so much on the internet. How much have you yourself learned to do tech? Some of you are very good at tech, and that's lucky, because increasingly we find that designers are having to use different CAD programs like Adobe Illustrator or CorelDRAW or so on to do the actual drawings for a client to be able to understand, or to do the patterns for a machine to cut and so on. These are the kind of jobs that are very much coming up now, if you have those skills. So some designers have learned them, some designers haven't. And then again, there's all the apps you can use in the business. Maybe you have a website and so on. So people with tech skills can be really helpful in working out how you maximize resources that are already available, often free, versus how many people do you need doing those things. Or you need the same amount of people, but because of tech, you're able to make your business much, much more efficient. I want to use the example of, I'm going to stop sharing for 2 minutes, then we'll come back. I want to use the example of a young lady in Nairobi, Namyak, who has a design lab. And during COVID, she learned how to use a software program. She's a very good pattern cutter. She's a designer and pattern cutter, and she loves making patterns. So she learned a new software that can, first, she can make patterns using the computer. She can adapt patterns on the computer, and it has a kind of 3D rendering. She enters the measurements of the avatar, creates a body, and then as she alters the pattern, she can see a 3D representation of what the finished garment will look like. This includes things like selecting the type of fabric. So the software now changes if you are talking about, say, a denim, or if you're talking about a silk, The exact same pattern will now be shown on that figure, and it will flow differently. If it's denim, it will be stiff, and if it's silk, it will be floppy. And you immediately get a 3D illustration of what that pattern will look like. Now, that is just amazingly helpful technology, particularly for designers who may not understand pattern cutting fully, but also for other types of clients who maybe have ordered from the designer, and then the designer wants to present different types of looks. And the client says, oh, I'm not sure whether to use this fabric or that fabric. And the designer is able to get this rendering to actually show. A rendering is a drawing, so it's like an image. And it's very relatable for the public, because if we look at our fashion businesses across the continent and our very traditional ways of making things, which are just amazing, but when it now comes to showing a drawing, a flat drawing to a client, whether it's an individual, whether it's a shop, whether it's a big company that wants things, often the person looking at the drawing doesn't understand the drawing. And you'll agree with me that how we use the digital space now, the social media and so on, everybody's creating their own facial avatar. Everyone's playing around with AI in some way or another. So those same people are the people making decisions on whether to buy this or that from you. And having this type of imagery, which is generated from a software program, really transforms how you present your work as well as how you make it. I don't know if we want to take any questions quickly, Toby Lola, so I don't get too boring talking to everybody all the time. Have you got any questions you'd like us to ask at this stage?
Okay. So there are a couple of questions here. The first person is saying, Anonymous is asking, the biggest barrier for visionary designers is funding, a lack of funding, which can kill businesses. Is the biggest deterrent in fashion. How can we solve this problem? Okay. So the person is asking about how, yes, lack of funding.
So let me try and answer. I think it's a bit of a journey, because when we look at formal financing from banks, they don't always understand the cyclical nature of our business. Let me just use the international calendar as an example. So we would make a sample collection, which we would present in, say, August, September in a fashion fair. So already before that, we have to invest in a sample collection. And that is often quite a lot of money. And if the sample collection isn't good enough, when it's presented in September, then the orders aren't there. So in some ways, the sample collection is wasted. So you need the initial funding on that sample collection. Now you go to a fair, which hopefully someone else is paying for, because now there are programs on the continent that are paying for designers to go and show in professional trade shows. There are expenses around that. Then the orders come in or don't come in. And initially, in the beginning, it's not likely that you get orders on an international professional fair. Usually people are just sussing you out, working out, you know, or saying, oh, that's cute, but they know nothing about you. So they're just seeing you. The second time, a few may buy, but it's usually the third time. And that is over the space of a whole year. And if you look at when their money comes in, it's over a space of 18 months. So let me go back to my illustration. We have a sample collection costing money. We have a trip, Paris, New York, wherever, costing money of some kind, even if it's sponsored. And then you get orders coming in, hopefully. Now, in many cases nowadays, retailers are willing to pay 50% upfront, and that is a godsend, because without that 50%, you are then looking for money to make the order. So imagine you get the money to make that order, then you're shipping, say, 3 months later, and you're getting paid. So that's taken time for negotiations. So from your show in September, you're maybe finally getting paid when you deliver December, January, round about then. So you've had a whole full 6 months, if not more, from making the sample collection to actually getting paid. And a lot of the banks that we borrow from don't understand that, can't understand it, don't want to understand it, whatever it is, which is therefore a huge amount of money for designers to raise. And I know there are people on the continent working to try and find a solution to this problem, but that's where we're at right now. So if you own property, you can get a loan, but then you also have to negotiate when it gets repaid, because you don't really want to start repaying that immediately. You want to be able to repay it when you get paid the bulk of the money. But you also have to now look at, is it better maybe to borrow the sample collection money if you need to borrow from a group of your friends or some kind of savings organization you're involved in, and then you find other ways of repaying that slowly before you now go into the other things. Other ways you can do it is if you have a business that has financial figures, and I re-emphasize the thing about formalizing and having figures, like you can then sell a bit of your company. You can either get debt financing where someone lends you money and you have to pay it back. And as I said, you need to negotiate so you have a little bit of time before you start paying it back. Or you can sell shares in your company. That's a whole other story in terms of valuation. But for example, in my own business, that's what I did. I had a little bit of money from my family initially, which was incredibly helpful. And then when I'd opened a small shop in my garage and I was selling exactly the same amount every month, I was like, okay, this place has reached its threshold. I need somewhere else to be able to now reach a bigger market. And there I sold shares to clients and friends. But it's been that way of doing it. You know, we have a lot of shareholders. And the thing with shareholders is, like, you know, my shareholders have been absolutely amazing. My relationship with them when we've had ups and downs in business, I've not always been the best at communicating with them because I've thought, I don't know what to tell them. So you also have to think through where you're at in relation to who you ask money from. It's something I'm now working on, how to improve in that department. We've also had venture or angel investment into the company at one point. Now, why did they invest? It was looking at a company that had a big name, that was creating lots of exciting things, that had high social impact, working with lots of community groups. But angel investors come in with their own series of things of what they want to see happen. And you may or may not agree with what they want. So some things are perfectly understandable. They're putting in a chunk of money. They want a seat on your board. They want a certain amount of decision making. All of those things, if I'm putting in a huge chunk of money, I also want those things. But there may come a time where you find that what you want and what they want are not necessarily the same thing. And at that point, either you agree to part ways or, you know, and that can happen, you just find somebody else. But these are things that happen over the evolution of a business. We've been in business since '96, which is quite a long time. But the other thing that I've found is that it's not a stable operating environment. Now, before COVID and bank crashes globally and things like that, the developed markets might not have understood that, but now they've seen it in their own markets. So I think we have to put everything into perspective and understand that business goes up and down. And some of the things that make us go down are not things we can control. Many of our countries get affected by elections, for example. People stop spending just before an election, and they take a lot of time to start spending again. I know I'm talking for many countries. That has an impact on the business. So any money you're borrowing, you have to think through, how is that going to work in my particular business? And think that through before or at the time when you're going to borrow the money. Don't borrow the money when you're about to go through a very low dip that you can see coming. Then if you need something, just make it small. Make it small, return it, and move like that. And then from there, you can grow. I hope I've answered that question, Toby Lola. Is there another one you'd like me to answer?
Yes, you did. You did answer that question well. So there are people asking questions about the 3D device or the 3D software that you mentioned earlier. Yes.
I don't actually have the name of it. I was told that I'll try and get it in before the end so I can put it in the chat box. Yeah, but I think you can look for it on Instagram, Namyak. I'll put it in. Do I put it in the question and answer box, Toby Lola?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just put it in there. The lady that does it in Kenya. I'm just going to type against any of these questions, and hopefully they're visible to everybody. I think, yeah, I'm doing that now. Okay, next question.
Okay, so Doris is asking, how can a startup in the fashion industry gain entry into the international markets when designing a collection? Okay, how can a startup in the fashion industry gain entry into the international markets? And then her second question is, when designing a collection, what are the factors to consider?
What are the factors of what?
What are the factors to consider?
Okay. So the second part of this, I'm going to discuss Ikigai and try and help you think through who are you in the fashion industry. So we have to be realistic about our skills. What are we really good at? And why I say that's important is because different types of fashion have different avenues for reaching export markets. Now, our brand Kiko Romeo is kind of contemporary luxury, cutting edge. Every time we do a collection, we're researching, we spend a lot of money and time on research and making sure that we have a very cohesive collection, that it has something it's saying. It's a labor of love and it's a lot of work and it's all about storytelling. Now that type of brand goes for certain markets. Now, Canex has a program right now. If you've been in business for 4 years, you can apply for that and they take you first to Portugal, you do a fashion show there, then together with the people who organize an event in Paris Fashion Week, they select which designers to go there. Now, to get into that program, you already need to be together as a brand. You need to have got experience. You need to know what you are saying as a brand. You can't be somebody that's picking a little bit of this from here, a little bit of that from there, a little bit of that from there. Oh, I've seen that one did a nice this, and let me just change it around a little bit. It has to have more soul. It has to have more, they call it design integrity, but that's one type of fashion brand, which usually raises the ceiling or tells the ceiling to go away totally, because it's like art. And so it goes for a specific type of fashion event. I'm going to take a completely different illustration. You might be someone that is doing more traditional fashion. You have a whole lot of tailors who can do it. They make it the sizing is very adaptable, so it can fit many different body types. And you can really produce in volume. Like when I say volume, you can be shipping it by the container if you get the right order. Now that is a kind of brand that would go to a completely different market. It wouldn't be doing the London Fashion Weeks, Paris Fashion Weeks, Milan Fashion, it wouldn't be doing that. It would go to a more commercial fashion fair. I haven't been to Magic, but Magic might be that type of fair from what I've heard. So it's about knowing your brand and where you can now enter. Another informal way of doing it, which is very effective, is using your own diaspora, your friends, your relatives in different markets, organizing a pop-up in their house. Maybe they call it a trunk show. That's a fancier name for the same thing. But a trunk is basically a suitcase you put clothes on and you take to the other side and you open and you sell. Now, the good thing about something like that is that often the costs are much lower. And you get a very good idea of what the market wants and how much they're prepared to pay for it. Of course, you also have to be skilled at not being shy about your prices. You have to have worked them out and you have to be confident that they're the correct prices. But then from there, you might arrive at the other end and your friend might say, oh, this is far too cheap. You need to increase your prices. Do it. People in other markets may have more disposable income. And so if you're able to make a higher profit, so much the better. So there's different ways. I would suggest that you try what seems closest to you, but can I also take you back on the African continent and remind you that we also have our markets and we also have people who want to buy from another African country. And you can also be getting into export by networking on platforms like this. You find designers, you Google them on Instagram or check them, whatever, find designers that do a similar quality of product to yours. Maybe there's a commonality. Maybe you both like using color or you both like using decorative techniques, but what you do and they do is different. Reach out. Maybe you can actually start sharing sales spaces. So you sell their things and they sell your things. It involves a certain amount of trust. You can start slowly, but I would strongly encourage it because even at our stage of business now, we're looking right now at a project with other designers of how do we sell together? What can we come up with here? This is missing. Why don't we do it together? And if you know your own brand, you're confident what it's about, and the other brand you're talking to, you know, has a similar level of product and it would appeal to the same audience, you can combine in these things because no customer is only going to wear your brand. It's only you that's only going to wear your brand. Unless you're paying someone, they're going to buy from different brands. They're going to combine it in their way. That's where styling comes in and individual personalities and expression. And so you should never be scared to sell alongside someone that has a similar quality level. I say that because someone that is our client, for example, isn't going to want to buy an item that maybe has threads that haven't been cut off. Just, they're going to expect that if I'm selling alongside somebody that has a similar quality level. So yeah, I hope that's answered that question.
Yes, it has.
We take one more?
Okay. Anonymous attendee, what do we have custom-made clothing service so cheap in Nigeria?
Just repeat slowly, please. What do we have?
Why do we have custom-made clothing service so cheap in Nigeria?
So why do we have custom-made clothing in Nigeria and in Africa, basically, right? That would
Yeah,
be...
so cheap, so cheap.
What's soulship?
Okay, so she's saying that custom-made service is very cheap in Nigeria. So she's asking why.
Aha. Yes, very good question. So that, if we look at the fashion ecosystem across the continent, is definitely something that we need to look at and we need to improve on, because there's two sides here. On the one side, you have a tailor, it may be a designer, it may be a tailor, making the clothes and knowing what it costs. And on the other side, you have a buyer who just wants a nice outfit and they want to bargain and get it as cheap as possible. So there's a kind of, how would I put it? It's almost like a responsibility. I saw my role when I started as a designer here to also improve the quality so I could charge higher prices and therefore pay higher prices for the actual inputs and the crafting that was going into the product. I feel that often it's a problem of confidence. Sometimes the people buying are of a much higher social class than the person selling. And you get into this very uneven dynamic where the tailor almost feels like the servant of the wealthy person who's buying the clothing. Now, how do we change this? And why I say how do we change this is because someone who's really doing fantastic custom made has to be celebrated. There are many designers on this call who will say how difficult it is to get a highly skilled tailor. It's a skill that in many cases younger people don't want to do. And when they do it, they're often not as attentive. But some people choose it as a career path, but need to earn more money from it. So, I feel, okay, in Kenya, I had wanted to do Fundi of the Year, like Tailor of the Year. Why did I want to organize an event for that? I haven't done it, and please, somebody just do it. We need an award system where we recognize the craftsmanship on the continent as having a high value. We recognize that this person has put in so many hours to learn their craft, as well as just being exceptionally good at it. And that has to happen right across the continent. We need to celebrate to get away from that kind of social class denigration. Oh, anyone can do it. No, anyone can't do it. Now, we as designers in our communities have a role to play because we should be the first people celebrating those. So if you have a design business and you're doing custom made, start telling your story of the process. Start recording videos of your people making things, crafting things, using their hands. This is worth a lot of money. Our hands are extremely valuable. And the crafts we've learned to do, they take hours and hours and years. We learned them as children. That's how we learn. So as a designer, tell the stories. If you're a designer knowing other people who do that kind of business, try and help them, coach them, help them understand how to look at the labor hours going into the garment, and don't work out the labor hours as the cheapest possible employment. Like, imagine the tailor. What's the tailor going to do if the tailor's paid a bit better? They're also going to become someone who spends money. They're going to support many more people. So it's a social issue. I can't really answer it in one webinar, but please let's all take responsibility for elevating what craftsmanship means, because it's dying out in many other continents. And in this continent, we still have it. And then custom made is not going anywhere because people have different body types. They like getting things that fit them. And they like originality. They like to be able to have something that nobody else has. And as a customer, they like to be able to decide what they're getting and make changes. You call that co-designing. Co-designing is what you should market it as. Collaborative process. Use words that elevate the experience so that you can charge more. Toblilola, I'm going back to my presentation and then I'll take more questions later. I hope this is useful.
That's fine.
So let's go back onto this. Now, I've done a huge big list of all the types of jobs. Now, these are not all of them, but just off the top of my head. In a developed fashion ecosystem, there are many different specialized jobs. Already designers specialize. Are they women's wear? Are they menswear? Are they designing the textile? Now, if they're designing the textile, you have different specializations for a print textile or for a woven textile. And again, for a knitted textile. You have knitwear designers. Now, a knitwear designer, in many ways, apart from learning how to play with pattern and the actual technical side, the way they draw is often closer to what a graphic designer might do in terms of how they make their illustrations for others to understand. Accessory designers, that, you know, there's all kinds of accessories, bags, belts, and so on. I haven't got headgear designers here, that milliners, they're another lot. Footwear, graphic designers, so you do t-shirts, what's the design going to be on the front? Product designers might sometimes bag and product designers overlap, but product designers are also things like who designs your cup, who designs the chair you're sitting on, and so on and so forth. Like there are so many others. I haven't put interior designers. That's another one that we work with a lot in the fashion industry. Interior designers do our shops. So many. If you go onto a fashion photo shoot, photographer, videographer, art director, producer. Producer is the person that puts everyone together, makes sure that they're on time, make sure that they have their food and snacks, make sure that whatever, there's Wi-Fi if necessary, that the equipment's there, all of that kind of stuff. Stylists. So back in the day, fashion designers did their own styling, but nowadays the whole thing of styling is a huge career across the continent. It's big on a fashion shoot, it's big at a fashion show, but it's also an everyday thing of how do you dress a media personality to go on the screen, but how do you also dress them to go to a party in the evening? How do you keep track of what they wore here and what they wore there? That's the job of a stylist. A stylist's job on a fashion shoot will be to, first of all, choose the clothes that they're going to, how they're going to be photographed together, and then steam them, have a needle and thread, pins, check what they look like on the model, pin it at the back if it's not quite right, and so on. Hairstylist, I haven't put a makeup artist here. I don't know why, because makeup artist is also there. You have so many different professions that work with fashion without being a fashion designer. And some of you may be one of these other things also. Maybe you're 2 or 3 of all these things. When you're a small business starting, you do many of these things. But that is an idea behind the scene. Then fashion events. A creative director, just like with a fashion shoot, I'd put art director, creative director, same thing. What is the vision of the whole shoot or the whole event? What is it trying to do? And what is the creative artistic message that it's sending out? If we talk about storytelling, the creative director would be working out how to tell the story through the imagery or through the experience or through like the whole event itself. A set designer is the person that does the actual setup Like if you've got a runway, what does the runway look like? What does the backdrop look like? And so on. That would be a set designer, just like for theatre. Producer, I'd explained the producer is the one that makes sure everyone's on time, that everything is where it should be for things to move. Choreographer would be the person that shows the models how to walk, where to walk, works out the whole program from a movement perspective. If there's a dancer, they might, maybe sometimes the choreographer is a dancer, but just someone that understands how the models can move, where they should stop, and so on. Sound engineer, if you're watching a fashion show or at a fashion event and the sound's not good, nobody enjoys themselves. So a sound engineer is there to make sure it's okay. Same thing with lights. Lights, this isn't just about fashion shows, but lights for a fashion show are so important because nowadays everything is digital marketing. And if your lighting is wrong, then you don't get good photos, you don't get good videos. That means the designers can't use them. That means you can't use them. That means the publicity that comes, that's maybe marketing a specific place, can't happen. So if I have to choose out of all of these, for me, the lighting is always number one. The sun, of course, or rather the shade, daylight is great if you don't have money, but you do need a lighting designer if you're using artificial lighting. DJ, not just any DJ, please. If you're doing a fashion event, again, find a DJ that loves the movement of fashion and can put together a soundscape that makes it such a pleasant experience, everyone feels great. Models, you know about that as a career. Models come in all shapes and sizes. Often it's about how they carry themselves, their posture and their confidence. For international shows, there's a reason why they often have tall, skinny models, and if it's a plus size show, then they would have plus size models. The reason for that is because designers like you and me do fashion circuits. So we show in Lagos, then we show in Paris, then we show in New York, or wherever we show. Or we show in, I mean, there's so many circuits, let me not go there. But you don't want to make a new collection every time you go to a new place. You make one collection. And that is why you have what they call a standard model size. Because if I take my clothes to Lagos and then I take them to Paris, the models are going to fit the same collection. And maybe I'm going to have to make it slightly smaller here, slightly bigger there. But generally speaking, I don't have to invest another huge amount of money making new samples. That's what it's about. So as a designer, choose, are you going to do the plus size circuit? At which point you find out what are the standard model sizes for plus size shows. If you're doing the other circuit, what are the standard things? Now, if you do a show that's your friends and family and whatever, maybe you'll have to take your ready-to-wear clothes that are ready to sell. But for a designer who's aiming to do the others, that's how it works. And it's really financial reason. It's not because someone likes this or doesn't like that. It's because they don't have the money to make, and it's really a lot of effort and energy. So they can't be doing that all the time. They don't have the time to then go and sell. As designers, our circuit is design a collection, show a collection in whichever way. And that showing of the collection now involves selling the collection, receiving the orders, making the collection. And then we're back again to designing, showing, selling, and then making the production. That's how it is. So we don't want to now have to have all of these other things to make in between, because we're going to slip up on something. And photographers, videographers, they kind of go everywhere now. If you are able to do that as well, fantastic. But having really high quality photos is great. Just a side note, always test models, photographers, videographers, just test them, look at their work, see how it is. If you do a model edition, just take some photos on your phone. Does the model photograph well? This is a side note, but you want your money to go places. So some models can look great, but their photos are terrible, and vice versa. You can have someone that you think, oh, maybe this one's not so much the look I want for my brand. But then when you take a photo, you're like, oh, wow, they look really good. So keep an open mind. Wow, so many jobs in this fashion industry of ours. If we build it, then we're going to have so much more diversity in our job marketplace, which I'm sure would be pleasing to very many people. Manufacturing. I think many of you know these jobs already. Machinist, someone sits at the machine. A finisher. Now, let me highlight a finisher, because in many of your manufacturing places, you have one person doing everything: cutting, stitching, and sewing on the buttons. As you get a little bit bigger, you may find it's beneficial to split some of the jobs for the consistency of your brand. So we chose a long time ago to have a finisher who specializes on making buttonholes, doing the blind hemming, doing hand stitching, sewing on the buttons, and so on, because we wanted a level of expertise that would be across everything. And I just realized I've left out a very essential person, and I don't know if I can alter it now. I can't. A quality controller. How could I forget? That one is the most important person. A quality controller. Look for someone, and maybe one of you could be a fantastic quality controller. You need to be meticulous. You need to love the details. You need to be willing to spend time on the teeny weeny details that make the difference in the bigger picture. Those are the people you look for as a quality controller. Because when they're given a guideline of this is how it should be, they go through it bit by bit, and you make sure that the things get corrected before they reach the customer. A pattern cutter. A lot of us are designers and pattern cutters, that's fine. But pattern cutting in itself is a job. And a lot of designers have great ideas and can draw, but they're not that good at cutting. So a pattern cutter is a very helpful profession. And in the market we're in Kenya, I know I get asked all the time, do you know a good pattern cutter? Because it's very much in demand. So if you like patterns, please consider making a career as a pattern cutter. Cutter, the person that cuts the cloth. Now, again, many people, it's the same people doing that, but actually cutting is a profession in itself. It's an important one, because how do you match patterns? If you don't cut it properly, then by the time it reaches the machine, it doesn't look good. So that is somebody that in our workshop, we also have someone that's dedicated to cutting all the bundles, making sure everything's in them and so on, and looking after the patterns that have been made by the pattern cutter. Storekeeper, who keeps your fabrics, your buttons, your this is your that. These people maybe, they maybe do more than one job, but a storekeeper with everything in order is important, both for you to know what you have that you can make things quickly, but also from a financial perspective, accountability on your materials, because your materials are money. Your stock in the shop is money. So those things have a financial value and should be recorded very carefully. And then I added decorative handcrafters. In our countries, we've all got handcrafting techniques we're working with. So these people may be employed full-time, they may come in part-time, it's a bit of a mix. I'm talking too much. My throat is getting dry. Excuse me. Let me just finish. Tommy Lola, rescue me. I've been talking too long. Let's have a question.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we'll take questions now. Emma Fundi Jalasi Sakar, she's asking, I struggle with creating ready to wear because most standard sizes are not good for African bodies, especially women and trousers. Do you know where I can get detailed size charts for African curvy bodies? Or are there tricks I can use?
Keep asking some more questions. I'm noting them.
Okay. So the second, another question that we can take from Seromume. What advice would you give to a leather goods brand trying to backward integrate into production in order to manage supply chain better, i.e. managing the brand and a production company at the same time?
Hi,
Okay.
hi, just to give Anne a bit of a break from her voice, I
Mhm.
see that there's a question there from somebody who's saying they're a social entrepreneur and they do both for profit and not for profit activities, and how can they find financing? So we'll give Anne a minute while I attempt to answer that question. So essentially what you need to know is there are different types of funders and financiers, and they have different reasons why they fund. And once you understand the different types of funders and financiers, you can start to understand what your value proposition is to them. So typically, for people that fund social impact or not-for-profit work, the reason why they fund is because it's aligned to their mission. And so if you're applying to a not-for-profit funder, and this would typically be funders that give grants to organizations or to businesses, they would typically have a mission that's related to those grants. So the mission may be related to job creation, or it may be related to promoting African narrative, or it may be related to supporting more equality between genders. So there are different types of mission. It may be related to the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, Goal 8 is for decent work. Goal 5 is for gender equality. So the first thing to do is when you're finding financing from those type of funders is to understand why are they funding, so that when you're applying, you can show how your proposal aligns with the reason why they're funding. So you would need to frame your not-for-profit proposition in the context of why that funder is funding. So the first thing to think about is the mission, particularly for not-for-profit funding. The second reason why funders may fund is for access to the audiences that you have. And so if you are applying to such a funder, what you'll need to demonstrate to them is the type of audiences you have access to, whether it's your customers or people that are coming to your fashion show or people that are engaging with your socials or your storytelling and that kind of thing. In which case, when you're pitching to that type of funder, you need to be demonstrating how you can increase their access. Another type of funder looks at status. Some funders are targeting certain levels of status in society. So, for example, if you're a luxury brand, and let's say an FMCG brand or a drinks company or a bank want to be aligned with the types of luxury customers that you're targeting, then they may want to fund you because it gives them status. which appeals to, which would be appealing to the type of high profile luxury customers that you have. Other funders fund because they want to have a sort of social life or events that they want to be associated with. And so again, you have to demonstrate to them how you provide them with that. But the short answer to that question is you need to determine when you're fundraising why funders fund and the thing that drives their giving. All of these examples I've given are for mission, for access, for status, for social life. These are all related to funders that fund not for profit. So that's one thing. And then when you're looking at for-profit funders and financiers, you need to understand the types of financing, whether it's debt, which is a loan, whether it is equity, which is they want a share of your business, whether it's something in between those things, which is maybe they give you a loan and later you can convert it to a share in your business, the different funding types and instruments. So you first need to understand the types of instruments that the funders use, and then the types of criteria that they're considering. So Anne had already mentioned that formalization is always a key requirement for many of these institutional investors. And so overall, the answer to that question is really understanding the funding landscape so that when you're pitching something that's relevant to the funder. All different types of funders fund for a different reason. And so if you're using the same proposal and the same pitch to every single thing that you're applying to, then you're probably doing something wrong. You want to understand the rationale for why the funder funds so that you can tailor your request to their approach and their reason for funding. I hope that answers your question, and I hope that gives Anne a bit of a breather, and we can go back to you, Anne.
I'm so grateful. Thank you very much for that, Ajoma. I've consumed a lot of honey. Let's see what happens. So the question on ready to wear and sizing, I think we have to make our own size charts. And if you as designers in your country get together and use your data, you can come up with a national size chart. Why not? What I did here was I changed my size chart. I started from a British one, I think, and then I adjusted it. I found I needed more on the hips and I needed a shorter torso length and so on. But imagine what this would be if you use this community that you're in now to actually form groups in your own country and collect that data and then work with it. It would be fantastic. That's what we need. So I encourage you. On the leather goods and backward integration, I would first of all say collaborate. Collaborate with others who are already doing the kind of work you need, because maybe you can go into a kind of partnership where your businesses support each other. If that is not available, then learn from another country. Go and visit somebody that makes the same kind of leather goods that you want to make and go and learn from them. Maybe they'd even come in as an investor in your country, or learn online. There's so many ways to do it, but do remember that manufacturing equipment, it costs a bit of money, but you can also get asset finance for it. So if you're really wanting to do that, go for it. I can't remember what the third question was, but I have seen the time. So I think I'm going to go back to the presentation and then we see from there. Sorry, I share screen. Here we go. I'm just going to quickly race through the few others. I hope you've already seen them, but things in communication. Oh, how have I done the wrong thing here? Yeah, so things in communication, lots of jobs going there. We're all desperate as designers. We're desperate for good digital marketers because you can't do everything. So there are some designers that are very good digital marketers. There are some that aren't, and it takes too much of their time. Fashion illustrators. Interestingly, they've had a rebirth because of the need for content. There's a big opportunity now if you're an illustrator. Content producers, fashion influencers. Influencers in Kenya are earning a lot of money, much more than designers. So if you have an aptitude for that and you enjoy it, it's a great possibility. Bloggers, fashion journalists, it's very difficult to get a well-written fashion article locally, at least, I mean, I'm talking myself. There's a few journalists who have specialized in this area, but not many. So if you're a journalist on this, please just learn the fashion terminology, hang out with designers, start writing their stories. We need the coverage, but equally, your skills are just so important. Copywriter, this is for things like a website, or even for your digital marketing. You may need somebody who writes the captions. This also brings us into language. I haven't put here translator, but which language are you going to market in? Are you only doing English? Are you only doing French? Are you only doing Portuguese? Are you doing a mix? Are you including any African languages? How do you want to position your brand? Because all of them have reasons for and against, but take us back to the whole thing of translator, because maybe you want to do more than one language. Sales assistants, my goodness, the most important people. Fashion PR agents. So PR agents, we know quite a lot of people perhaps in our communities. We know of PR agencies, but have any of them specialized in fashion? Maybe they're doing PR for your telecommunication companies. Maybe you have somebody doing PR for musicians. Is anyone specialized in fashion? Can anyone become specialized in fashion? Because then they get to know the editors that are going to want to publish their stories. And if they're really good, they're going to build the bridges in other countries as well. Amongst yourself here in this amazing network, maybe you have people in different countries who could do this. And somehow you could end up collaborating across the continent. Now, fashion buyers. A buyer is a professional who actually knows what they're looking for and is already imagining it in their space. They're often retailers, but not always. They could be someone that has individual clients that they buy for. It's a specific profession where you have to know, as a fashion buyer, you have to know your market. You have to know who you're selling to and what they're going to want, and then you place your order according to that. Wholesalers, fashion agents are so needed on this continent. Designers are having to do everything. Who on this webinar loves fashion, loves different brands, and could handpick brands of a similar quality that would appeal to the same kind of retailers, but have unique styles? Please become an agent, a wholesaler. We need people that specialize in placing products in the right shops, locally, regionally, globally. Merchandisers are people who arrange the clothes in the shop and also who arrange the windows and who drive sales. It makes a massive difference if someone knows how to arrange a rack well. You know, they come along, they move things around, and all of a sudden, people start buying your product because it's presented differently and it catches the eye. On the right, I've got a series of other jobs that apply in just about any business on the continent and off the continent. All of these people are required. Whether you require them full-time or not depends on the size of your business. But you can always outsource some of these essential skills. For me, having an in-house accountant was just like such a blessing. But other people would say, oh no, this other one's more important to me. But make sure you cover those, whatever business you're in. I wanted to say, we don't have a lot longer, but I wanted to say a little bit about this again, the opportunities you have in the fashion ecosystem. Shared selling spaces can really work. Designers and their staff may well know how to sell your product also. And if you have a kind of reciprocal relationship, it works. So do consider it. And whether it's a permanent shop or a pop-up, you can always try a pop-up. If it works well, do a permanent thing. What we're seeing a lot now after COVID is that people still want to go to shops. Yes, people buy online, but they do like going to shops. They like the experience. So if you make your shop special enough, people are still going to come because they want to touch and feel your products. I put it as a kind of trend because it's like we're going back into that. But you need to look at where is the shop. It's always about location, and don't cheat yourself. Like sit in a cafe, look at how many people are passing, how many have shopping bags that you can see they've actually shopped. Not from the supermarket, from other types of shops. Instagram and Facebook, I'm sure most of you are younger than me and you know that works. It works generally very well, locally, even within the same city, it works. Google, a lot of you forget to register your business location. Now, when I travel, I'm going to check which fashion designers are in the, like if I go to Addis or I go to Lagos, whatever, I'm going to go on Google to see who's where. If you don't have your business registered, you're not visible, and I can't figure out how to get to you. So Google is really important. And if you get your clients to write reviews, you'll be more visible, which is really helpful. Facebook ads, I just learned, thanks to Mil Colleen, that there's a big difference between boosting a post and doing a specific advert. If you boost a post, the demographic that sees it is much broader. Whereas if you do an ad, you can tailor it to be very specific, even to the friends of your followers. And that means you can target much more carefully where your money goes. You spend less to get closer to the people who might buy your product. E-commerce. So I have a little bit to say about this, because it seems to me that there's been a general trend to tell all of us designers to have our websites and sell online. And I've got very mixed feelings about it. The reason being, we've tried it, and a number of other designers I know have tried it. So selling through another existing platform that works is great. So whether you're on Africrea and Anka, or whether you're on Industry Africa, or whichever platform you're on, that is a dedicated fashion e-commerce business that knows a lot about the logistics, that is good on like advertising their platform and so on. Even though you may look at it and think, oh, I should do my own thing because I want to create my own customer experience and so on. The main point is, how much money do you have to make your website visible? And what I'm hearing currently is that there was a time when it wasn't very crowded, but right now a lot of people have got online shops on their websites, and a lot of people have online websites that are not selling. You know, you spent a lot of time doing photo shoots and so on, you put your product up and it just sits there. Why? Because people don't know you exist. So the people that are buying from you are people who already know you and purposely go on your site because they want to buy your product. But for new customers, it's very difficult to reach them. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying if you're a small business, do these other things first. And if you need a website because you feel it makes you look more credible, whatever, Just do a simple one. Don't spend a lot of money now trying to, make it in a way that, particularly for clothing. I think for jewelry and bags, it works much more easily, but the same question arises as to how visible are you? How do people know you exist? Right, we are reaching the end. So let me just finish up on this. As I take my, but Joe, my help.
Right. Let me see.
Sorry.
Let me see if I can find a question to respond to. There's a question from Pamela K. How would you address the issue of retaining staff that you have trained, even when they're paid well? They leave because they feel ready to replicate your business on their own. So that's quite a common problem that we come across. There's no guaranteed way to do this, but there are a number of things to consider. One is to consider how you can bring your most critical talent on board as co-owners of your business. No matter how small their stake is, if there are roles that are critical to your business, see if you can give them shares in the company, or if you can give them a proportion of your profits, because this means that they then get a sense of shared ownership. The tech sector has really cracked how to do this. And so the way it works in the technology sector is that if you're working in a startup, you can vest shares in people, which essentially means that you can say to them, if you work with us for 4 years, for example, at the 4th year mark, we will give you this many shares in the company. And that creates a motivation, because people know that over time, they own some of the company that they're working for, they're more likely to stay. As I said, there isn't a foolproof way, but think about what strategies can you put in place that will increase the ownership in your business. Because think about it from the perspective of your workers. You can't expect that they'll have the same motivation for your business if they're not getting any benefit from the growth of that business beyond the salary that they're earning. So think about it from their perspective, and think about how over time you can get them to own part of the business. So research vesting as it relates to shares, consider profit share, and things that just motivate them. Also consider non-financial benefits for your staff. A lot of companies, as Anne was mentioning, operate informally. So it means that you probably don't have a pension scheme for your staff, you don't have health insurance for your staff. And all of that can be understandable, right? If you're a small business and you've grown, it's not that easy to put in place practices. But the more you can incentivize your workers to stay with you because they're getting all kinds of benefits, the better it is for your business. The solution is never to say don't train people, because I can't remember who the saying is attributed to. I've seen a quote where a HR director was asking a CEO, what if we train all these people and they leave? And then the CEO said to the HR director, what if we don't train them and they stay? That means that we're getting all these not great people staying in our business. So the solution is always train, and train, but find ways to get your employees invested in your business so that they can stay. I hope that answers the question. I'll see if I can take one more. There is a question about lawyers. What's the place for a lawyer? If yes, beyond setting up the business and handling disputes, how would you envision a fashion lawyer fitting in the industry? If not, how should that conversation be generated? There's certainly room for lawyers beyond registering and settling disputes. There's room around copyright. So you can start to do, and Anne has talked about storytelling a lot. If what you are is a lawyer, you can start to think about what value can you add to fashion companies around copyright and intellectual property. So for example, you can start to do short posts online, targeting fashion entrepreneurs about the value of copyright to their business, which can then convert to clients that you can then support with information about copyrights, trademarks, patents, and just IP related, intellectual property related advisory services. You can also help negotiate contracts even before the disputes happen. So Anne has talked a lot about partnerships. All of these partnerships should be guided by contracts. That's definitely a role for a lawyer. Again, you have to build your client base. You can start to share tips for developing partnership contracts in fashion, because people will come to you if they see the value that you can offer. Another thing to bear in mind as a lawyer is if you're a young lawyer, maybe 2 or 3 years cold to the bar, you also should be realistic about who's going to use your service. You don't expect that the most prolific, most high-profile fashion company in the place that you're based is going to work with you. So look at people, look at your peers, look at early stage fashion companies that you can offer advisory services to, and find ways to partner with them to build your own profile, so that if they see what you've done on one deal, they can then approach you for other things. So those are just some tips on the types of services that you can offer as a lawyer. Back to you, Anne.
Yeah, I think mine now is just to wind up and thank everybody for listening, because I think we've reached the end. I know we still have a lot more questions. There's so much to discuss. So please just can I motivate you to stay in touch with each other, do what you can to set up these networks in your countries, and then pool the knowledge together through this wonderful platform. Thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your fantastic presentation. So if you enjoyed that, and thank you so much, Ojoma, for answering some of the questions. So if you enjoyed Anne's presentation, please say thank you to Anne, show your appreciation to Anne in the chat box. Say thank you. You can drop a smiley and say thank you. Fantastic. So we've come to the end of the 2 community training sessions of the Fashionomics Africa Incubator and Accelerator programs. I would like to thank you for taking the time to join this session. I hope you've learned a lot and that you would use this new knowledge you have received to expand your business. We won't be able to take more questions because we're really run out of time. And so if you have any question that hasn't been answered, please send the questions to the help desk at fashionomics@cchub.com. Okay, so Labaka is going to send the email in the chat box. So just send your questions to the help desk. Thank you so much. Please connect with us on Instagram. It's very important that you follow us. A lot of people are asking about communities to follow. We are a community that you should follow. So follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at CC Hub Creative, and then on LinkedIn at CC Hub Creative Economy. Again, please connect with us on social media using our handle at CC Hub Creative. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. One more announcement I want to mention is our key mission. So one key mission we have is to build a strong community of African creatives. And that's why we launched the Starry Creative Spaces, which provides free work desks and event spaces in our Lagos and Nairobi office. So if you need a free desk with fast internet to work from, or you have a creative event you want to host, come and host it at iHub in Nairobi, Kenya, and CC Hub Lagos, Nigeria for free. Labaka is going to share with you in the chat box the registration link. So it's bit.ly/StarryDesk1. I'm also going to share it in the chat box. It's very important that you fill this form. That's if you're interested in working from our co-working space for free. We have free work desks, and we also have free event spaces in our Lagos and our Nairobi office. So I'll just give you 1 or 30 seconds, to click on the link. Make sure you click on the link because we'll be ending the webinar right now. So click on the link and make sure okay, so someone is saying, please put the Insta link. Don't worry, we're going to We're going to put that link there in the chat box. This is for Starry. Make sure you click on it and have it on your laptop so that when we end the session, you will be able to register for the Starry Spaces, which allows you to work from a co-working space for free and host events. It's not clickable. Okay, so let me try and edit that. Okay, so we're going to be filling a poll. So sorry, there's one more poll that we have to, we're so sorry. This poll is very important since you're asking about communities, building your brand, expanding your business. We're going to launch the poll right now. There are about 258 people on the call right now. I want everyone to fill this poll. Okay, there are just 3 questions and it's very important. Okay, so how many of you are filling it? Nobody has filled it yet. Is there a problem? If you can see the poll, please fill it out. If you can't see the poll, please tell us in the comment section. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So please, if you see the poll, please fill it out immediately. We just have 1% participation. Don't let me call your names out. Thank you so much. So it's increasing 4%, 5%, 6%. Fantastic. Once you're done filling the poll, please write done in the chat box. Fantastic. Just 3 questions. It's so easy. Tap, 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 and submit. Just 3 questions to answer. Tap, 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 and submit. So we have 16% of attendees who have filled the poll. We need more. We need more people. Is rising, is rising. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me just go to the chat box and send you all the links that you're asking for. Don't forget, fill the poll. We only have 27% participation and there are so many more people on this call. Okay, so let me. Fantastic. We have 40% participation. So I put in the Starry registration link. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Doris. Thank you, Victoria, Boadam. Thank you so much, Igozie, Bukeria, Dexy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We need how many more people? 50%. Fantastic. We've got into half. 50%, we're in 51%. Okay, you can't see the poll, but do more. Okay, just make sure you click on the 3 dots. I think you should be able to see it. If you click on the 3 dots, the poll will come out. That's if you are using your cell phone. How long is the co-working offer valid for? Throughout the year. Make sure you fill the link and apply to work in the space for free. Done, done, done. We have 57. We're going to be closing this webinar in 2 minutes. So please, I need you to fill the poll. It's very, very important, extremely important. We want to know how useful the knowledge you've gained in this session is. And we want to know exactly what is useful, what you found useful. Okay, so just get us to 75%, please, and we would end this call. Okay, thank you so much. So if you haven't filled out the poll, please do. Thank you. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Adonu. Please send us more info on the WhatsApp chat. We will send you more info on the WhatsApp chat. Okay, we have very little time to go, less than 1 minute. If you haven't filled out the poll, please fill out the poll. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm just going to do a short countdown. 20 seconds more. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Get it up to 80. One more person to fill out the poll. Thanks. So I've ended the poll. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this call. Thank you for taking time, to attend. If it was this session or last week's session, thank you so much. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, at CC Hub Creative. And don't forget to join the WhatsApp chat. Thank you, Winnie. Don't forget to join the WhatsApp group. Sorry, the WhatsApp group. And also don't forget to fill out our Starry Spaces link. I'm just going to put it there one more time, and then I will end the session. Just one more. Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to be ending the session right now. Thank you so much, and again soon, or anytime we have any events. Bye, everyone. Bye.